From the burning mesas of the Arizona desert to the slot machine-clad boardwalks of New Jersey, it's the Imaginarium with Scott and Todd. I'm Scott Colbert.
I'm the horror nerd, Todd Staruch.
And this week we're going to be talking about some of our favorite movie musical, well, not musicals, but music for horror movies. And I think
that was a stumbling way of saying soundtracks, folks.
I really kind of feel a little bit retarded today. I'm not sure what the
blame
what
it on the meds.
Well, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I will.
At least this time you don't sound like you're about to, cough up a human head.
I was at the doctor yesterday, and I had mentioned a few things to him, but one of them was sounding like I had just swallowed razor blades. And he said, "Well, that's probably just this, the specific inhaler that I have you on." He said, "There's a couple of others that your insurance covers, so let's try something different." So he described me a different inhaler, and I picked that up last night, and I started using it. And I don't have that hoarseness that I did with the flow vent. So I'm really happy about that.
Well, good. You sound much, much better.
Yeah, and I'm sure the listeners are probably relieved that they don't have to put up with my fingernails down the chalkboard voice this week. So, well, before we get to our topic, and I like that topic because I think music plays an important part in movies, period. But I think more specifically, it plays a little bit more of an important part with horror movies.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to that, I want to do something that in the almost 2 years that we've been doing this, I've never done, and that's read some comments.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I know, scary, isn't it?
It's
but we've gotten some really interesting feedback on the last 2 shows that we've done. So let's see. Let's go to Imaginarium 81, which is where we were talking about our favorite horror franchises.
Yeah.
And let's see.
And I think we also you talked about the creepy clown.
Yes. And SDMF put, "I believe the clown sightings silliness may have started down here in Greensboro or Winston-Salem." And to which I responded, "It's always the South." Because it always is the South. I mean, you don't hear these things starting up north or in California where you might actually expect something like that to happen. It's always the fucking South. Well, I don't know what it is.
When you marry your sister, weird things are bound to happen. I'm just saying. Just saying. Nothing good can come of that.
Send your letters too. Sockeye put up a gif of the "Welcome to Primetime" bitch.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I was complaining about like how Freddy Krueger, who was an awesome villain, degenerated into just a wisecracking source of one-liners. So yeah, I was happy to see that little movie there, that little clip.
Yeah, I was too. And then right under that, he took you to task for dissing Romero.
I know, no dissing Romero. I'm like, listen, George Romero can suck my dick, okay? It's just, now look, all kidding aside, like I said during that podcast, I totally get it. I never would minimize his role in horror, but I just simply do not worship at the Romero altar the way some people do, and deal with it.
Yeah. And Sockeye, further down, he actually asked you a question specifically. It says, "Todd, why are you so surprised that you found out the flip side of your neocon buddies?"
I don't know where the neocon buddy thing came from. I am very much a moderate, but I'm not surprised at all. There's nothing that um, shocks or surprises me anymore. And Stalk Guy was on a roll too, because just prior to that, you know, he was saying how he doesn't give two shits about Kim Kardashian or
Yes.
Kanye West, and I always find that funny because apparently he cared enough to have like a 3 or 4 sentence comment about them. So it's like I don't care about Kim Kardashian, but let me explain all these things that I happen to know about her, because I don't care, and let me go on, because I don't care. So I thought that was funny.
Okay, and right below, I'm not even touching that one. I'm just going to go right,
Okay,
right past it for right now. Anyway, uh, Detective D had made the comment that Friday the 13th was most consistent because the first one wasn't that hard to live up to, and he has a point about that.
He does, and I don't disagree with him. My whole point about it was just that it was just consistent in the villain and the all the tropes of horror. Don't have sex in the woods and et cetera, et cetera. That's all I really meant by that. And he goes. He mentioned how Chucky is a consistent
Yeah,
horror friend, and very much so. There are a lot of them.
and I am better mention the Final Destination series, which I totally forgot about, and I actually really happen to like a lot.
Well, it's funny. Like I saw in some of the comments, oh, how come you didn't mention this? How come you didn't mention that? I'm like, well, there are a million franchises out
Yeah.
there, and we've got an hour show, so we couldn't, we couldn't mention all of them. I liked Final Destination. I thought it got a little tired by whatever the fifth or sixth one. I don't know how many there are. Um, but yeah, there were a lot we could have talked about. But Scott, you made a great point um, when you said the problem with sequels, the mythology gets complicated and stops making sense.
Yeah.
I totally that happened to me with Halloween. You know,
Hmm.
trying to explain the this and that, and I'm like, I don't even care. Let's just see Michael Myers kill some naked
Yeah.
chicks. Like I don't, you know. And I Am Better is 100% right about the Paranormal Activity series. And I freely admit that in part three, I'm like, even as that movie, like we're approaching the conclusion of the movie, and I'm like, oh my God, no, please don't let it be that it's just a coven of witches. Please, oh, it's just a coven of witches. So I totally get it. Like I said, my thing about the Paranormal Activity movies is they get to me just because I have a whole bunch of irrational fucking sleep fears.
Yeah.
That's all, So, like when people today say, oh, nothing scares me. Well, there's got to be something out there that does. You might not admit what it is, but for me, like I have a bunch of wacky sleep shit. So
Yeah.
that's why they bother me. I never said they were stellar, movies.
That's a good point. And the thing is, these were the ones that we liked the most. So, if we skip a series that you happen to like, that's not a reflection on the series itself because we didn't mention it. It just didn't happen to be one of the ones that we particularly uh, liked enough to talk about. And let's face it, neither one of us is spring chickens, and our memories aren't quite what they were. So a lot of these things, like Final Destination, I had totally forgotten existed until it was
Yeah.
mentioned in the comments, which I suppose says something about the series. Oh wait, you mean there was this whole series of movies? Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, we could have talked about Scream, you know. There's been
Yeah,
a bunch of those. So yeah, there's a million of them, So again, get over
yeah.
it.
Going on to last week's show,
Yeah. Okay.
Stock Guy has right out of the gate, Scotty and Todd called it, and he has a meme of Donald Trump saying, "Billy Bush, you're fired."
Yep, exactly. Again, we did go off on a little bit of a political rant, you know, uh, and it felt good. God damn it,
Well, but
it really did.
Here's the thing about that, though. Stockeye was actually really kind of excited about that because his comment was, let me find it here. Political rant, you say, skips towards the end of the podcast, which is where we had it, was at the end of it.
Exactly.
So he was excited about that. And then he also gave us some praise. Yes, he did. And as predicted, you guys delivered.
Yeah, thank you very much there, Stalkeye. He had some kind words about my comments about all the dipshits staring into their phones at Comic-Con.
Yep.
And he's right. We may be guilty as taking a lot of pictures, but you know what? It's an event where you're going to take a lot of pictures. But I didn't bump into anybody while I was fucking doing it.
Well, yeah, because you have some common sense,
Yeah, so. I mean, I did hear a lot of "What the hell are you doing in the women's bathroom?" But that's a whole other thing.
And that's transgender rights, god damn it.
Yeah, listen. Exactly.
That's just a really big flip.
Oh my god. Oh boy.
Yeah, let's go get away from that comment really quickly. There's a little bit of an argument that came up between Stockeye and Turd Has Escaped the Gravy. And it was about the xenomorph. And Stockeye says the xenomorph is an evil motherfucker, and that scene in which he rapes Lambert to death is one of the most fucked up moments in horror cinema. And then Turd Escaped the Gravy is arguing that he didn't think the xenomorph raped her. So I'll leave it to you. Did the xenomorph rape her or not?
You know what? I hadn't thought about that in a long time. Like, I know that was a theory that came up, because of the scene. Like, if you think about it, and I admit I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but I will go on record as saying I don't think it's like a rape or a sexual assault or anything. I don't think the xenomorph put that much thought into what it was doing. It was just, I'm gonna murder this person in this particular way, and that's it. I really don't think that there was that much behind it. We might be reading a little too much into it. That's what I think.
So the xenomorph wasn't thinking he was going to grab it by the pussy.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The xenomorph I heard is a Democrat. So.
Okay. Well, then he'll just get a blowjob in the Oval Office. So.
Well, that's okay.
So. Hey, there's nothing wrong with a little lip action. I mean, what good is being the fucking president of the United States if you can't get your bishop waxed once in a while?
Listen, all I will say is back then when it happened, I was thinking, Jesus, Bill, you're the president, you're the leader of the free world, and the best you could do was Monica Lewinsky?
Well, I think pretty much everybody.
Monroe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's just it. Look at all the chicks that JFK banged. At least he had some taste.
Exactly. I'm like, wow, he had quite the lineup. So.
And it just proves with Bill, you can't take the trailer park out of the man.
That's true.
So, all right. And I hope we get to do this from time to time. This is actually kind of fun going through these comments. So, feel free to leave comments, and we'll go back to them every now and again and talk about them.
Oh, and by the way, I just want to send I Am Better a giant fucking thank you note in the form of a bag of dog shit for posting that animation of the Zuni fetish doll from
Yeah.
Trilogy of Terror. I fucking hate you.
Well, yeah, I gave him a fuck you for that too. So
Oh God, I
yeah.
just saw it again just now, looking at the
Yep.
comments. I'm like, ah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, there's more sleep I won't have
Yep,
tonight.
more nightmare fuel.
So, oh well. All right, so music, and this was a topic that you came up with, so I'll let you start it off.
All right, so well, I thought of it because like I've always loved movie scores and soundtracks. I like you said, they add so much to a movie. Anybody that doesn't think so, just there are actually you can go on YouTube and you can find some movies with the soundtrack removed. Go ahead and try and watch a movie without the soundtrack and see
Yeah,
how different it is. And a great soundtrack can make a good movie really great, and a bad soundtrack can make a great movie terrible. So it really does add a lot. I'm really into science fiction too, and like some the Star Trek movies, think of the Battlestar Galactica main theme and things like that. Star Wars,
yeah.
when those trumpets hit, you know, you get chills in the theater, you
Oh
know?
yeah,
So, and then, like you said, horror, it really adds a lot to the tone, and it can be really good or it can be really bad. One of the horror cliches that I hate the most is when the soundtrack or the score telegraph everything that's going to happen. You know,
yeah.
it becomes pretty easy to figure out. Um, a lot of them do misdirection really well, like the soundtrack builds and ultimately nothing happens, and you're like, you fooled me, you know. So it can really add or it can detract. So we'll do our little like list that we usually do. I had a really hard time with this because there are so many good ones.
Yeah.
It was really hard to rank them. If you were to put a gun to my head and said, "What's your favorite horror soundtrack?" I'd be like, you know what? Just pull the trigger because I really can't decide. So I'm gonna start off with David Lynch, Eraserhead. I know
Mm,
you're a big David Lynch fan. You know,
absolutely.
you wrote essays and I think you wrote. Did you write a book about him or was it?
Yeah, it's
It was
just a
an entire
collection of the
book. Yeah,
essays. Yeah.
yeah, just an entire book of
Available
essays
on
about David
Amazon and
Lynch.
where other fine ebooks are sold.
Yep, shameless self-promotion alert.
And it's only 99 cents, so don't be a cheap buck.
Wow, it's worth at least $1. I think you're
Yeah,
selling yourself.
I'd buy that for $1.
But anyway, just the whole movie itself is so creepy,
Mhm.
you know, and then just like the haunting score, the weird the song, the girl in the radiator
Yeah.
singing, it's just it's so creepy. And if I think I can't remember the artist's name, his collaborator, it'll come
Angelo
to me.
Badalamenti.
Yeah, well, but
But
th-
that's not the one who did that, I
yeah,
don't
but
think.
that's not for damn it, Alan Splett. Alan Splett
Okay.
was his collaborator, but the weird industrial sounds. I know they did like a lot of weird stuff, like actual machinery, like recording actual
Yeah.
machines and air blowing through glass tubes and stuff like that. Um, and I think it's also cool in that they're like I said about soundtracks giving things away. It doesn't really give you any cues, you know. It just kind of sets the mood, like the weird eerie mood of the film. And I think it's awesome and terrifying. So that's my first pick.
That's a good choice. And another good soundtrack for a Lynch movie is for The Elephant Man.
Oh yeah.
I think that's probably one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. Period. And I wouldn't class it obviously as a horror movie because it's more of a biography, although it's certainly horrific. so it's not going to be on my list. But I always feel like I need to mention that movie specifically because I think it's probably David Lynch's greatest achievement, and aside from Twin Peaks. Um, and the score is absolutely haunting. I listen to that a lot when I'm writing because it really sets a specific mood. My first pick. Oh, and I want to go back to something that you had mentioned about music setting the tone and whatnot. One of my big pet peeve with music is when they use it for a scare rather than just using it as background or to set the scene. Like, jump scares, where they ratchet up the sound of the music, you know, 5 times what it normally is when the cat jumps out or whatever the fuck it is. I hate that. I think it's
Yeah,
a cheat.
I'll buy that. It's really hard to do it well.
Yeah.
A real good jump scare is hard to come by.
Okay, well, my first one, this isn't going to be a surprise to anybody because I've kind of mentioned this probably too much, but it's the soundtrack for Hellraiser.
Okay.
Christopher Young did the soundtrack for it, and he also did the soundtrack for Sinister, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and a bunch of other stuff. He's a very prolific composer. It was very lush and very grand and yet intimate at the same time. And, the music during the chase scene down the hallway with Ashley Lawrence running away from that fucked up looking monster, and the music and the bells chiming when the Cenobites make an appearance, it all adds to the chills in the film. And this has always been one of my favorite scores, period, too.
Yeah, that's definitely a good choice. Definitely. All right. So next, and again, oh my God, this was probably, for me, this was the hardest kind of list thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
So my next one, these really aren't in any sort of order, I guess. My next one is the soundtrack, Mr. Bernard Herrmann for Psycho.
That was my number one.
Oh, stop it! Really?
Yeah, it was. It was.
You know what? I am not surprised at all. It could easily, if I ranked them, it could easily be my number one. And what's interesting is Alfred Hitchcock had originally wanted almost like a breezy type of soundtrack, something bright and airy. And Herrmann said, no, let check this out. He's I'm gonna do something with strings that you probably haven't heard before. I'm gonna try to make violins like brutal and ugly. And boy, he did that. And I think everybody knows the strings from Psycho sequence, and it really set the stage for decades and decades. Like people have been ripping it off ever since, a lot have come close. There's a lot of great imitators out there, but nothing really will ever match it. And I'm really sorry that I stole your number one. But go ahead, go since it's on your list. Oh, give me let's hear your take on it.
Well, you've pretty much said everything about it that I could say. It's such an iconic score, and particularly the bit from the shower scene, which everybody remembers. And I can almost guarantee, just by saying that, everybody is hearing that music in their head at
I
this
know I
very
am.
moment. And I know, and I am too. And although I'm sure you're probably now thinking of Janet Leigh's tits.
No, actually, really hadn't, but now I am.
Well, I'll give you a few minutes along with your thoughts. But yeah, if you listen to the entire soundtrack, it's just so beautifully done. Bernard Herrmann was, I don't throw the word genius around uh, lightly. But when it comes to music composition, I would certainly classify Bernard Herrmann as a genius. And he scored some early Brian De Palma movies too.
Yes, yes.
To add further to De Palma's reputation of being a Hitchcock ripoff. Um, but I don't know that I have ever heard a bad Bernard Herrmann score.
Um, Probably not. I mean, he did so many. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Citizen Kane, Jane Eyre. I'm trying to think of some like horror ones. The Day the Earth Stood Still
Yeah.
was Herman. And I think didn't he score Taxi Driver as well?
Yes, he did.
He
That's
did,
right.
yes. Yeah. So some famous big time movies. And of course The Birds and Marnie for
Yeah.
Hitchcock as well. And then there was another one for Hitchcock that I can't remember.
Yeah, it was one of his lesser movies. I think Family Plot or something like that.
Yeah, one of the later ones. I just don't remember. Someone in the comments will mention it. Hey, dicks, how did you get that last Hitchcock movie, dumbasses?
Yeah, well, I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not shy about telling us what's what. Okay. Well, my next one is The Wicker Man from 1973.
Good one.
And I mentioned that simply because I kind of like it, although it's very dated. It hasn't aged particularly well, the soundtrack anyway. But it shows what you can do. Well, The Wicker Man is such an interesting movie because a lot of the creepy stuff happens in broad daylight. In fact, everything that now that I think about it happens in broad daylight, or at least with the sun out. And the soundtrack kind of represents that too. It's a very kind of light, folksy type soundtrack, and certainly none of the dark foreboding that you would expect from a horror movie. And I think having that kind of a soundtrack makes it even a little bit more creepier. And Paul Giovanni did the soundtrack for that, and he was an actor and playwright as well as a composer. He did a lot of different things. Very talented guy. And I really do think that score is perfect for that movie. It's very hard to have kind of like an upbeat score for a horror movie and have it work. In fact, I can't think of any other horror movie where that has happened. But for The Wicker Man, it fits perfectly for that island.
Yeah. I like that's now that you mention it, that's a good soundtrack. I had not even thought of it.
And the other reason that I had thought about it is because I had seen The Wicker Man not that long ago, a few months ago, for the first time. And, the music is one of the things that struck me about it. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Again, God, this was so hard. And I really wanted to avoid some of like the really obvious ones.
Yeah.
I tried really hard, but I can't let this one go. I had to get Halloween in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But not necessarily Halloween. Of the Halloween franchises, I picked Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, because I loved what Carpenter and Alan Howarth did with taking the base, the original theme, and making something completely new and different out of it.
Yeah.
I've always felt that Halloween 3 never got the recognition that it deserved. And I am very happy to see the resurgence of it. In fact, I've been fortunate enough to meet Alan Howarth several times and see him perform live at several conventions.
Oh, nice.
And so we had that discussion about how, Halloween 3 is finally getting recognition as a good horror film with a great score. True horror fans always kind of had love for the movie. The
Yeah.
average horror fan doesn't get it, like why it doesn't fit in with the Michael Myers mythology, and they don't understand that Halloween was supposed to be more of an anthology series with a new Halloween movie by a different director every year. I mean, ultimately, it didn't go that way, but that's what it was supposed to be, and that's where Halloween 3 came in. Um, but yeah, I love the score for Halloween 3. The soundtrack is very complex, um, and the synthesizers, the electronics, um, and then it just builds and builds. I like it a lot. So you can, and of course, the original Halloween theme by Carpenter is a classic, and everybody knows it. And I guess that's kind of why I avoided it and went with Halloween 3 instead.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of watching Halloween 3. I started watching it last night, and I hadn't seen it well since it came out. So it's been a couple of decades since I've seen it, and I really had forgotten most of it. But that music, you're right, really, it's really a top-notch score. And when I was thinking about my list of soundtracks, I knew there was going to be Carpenter had to be on there somewhere because in addition to his being a really top-notch director, he's really a top-notch composer too for his movies.
Hmm.
And the Carpenter movie that I picked was Christine. The reason that I picked Christine, uh, aside from the music that Carpenter did, was just the other music that they used for the movie that was so appropriate at so many different times. It the music became the car talking almost, and you just can't get any better than some of that '50s music. God damn it, that's just a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Good golly, Miss Molly, and yeah, and the funny thing is when listening back to them now, some of those songs are actually really pretty.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. They snuck a lot of stuff in that, for the unsuspecting listener.
and I actually kind of like that better than just being blunt about it, like a lot of music is now. And I sound just like my fucking parents when it comes to music, today's music, and I hate that about myself. But I guess that's true. Every generation looks down at the current crop of music. So
Yeah,
uh,
this is true.
Christine soundtrack stands on its own. Carpenter's work on it's fantastic, but more importantly, the songs which were inserted into the movie so well, and which King inserted into the novel very well also. It's one of those movies that really, where the music makes it. Uh, because when the radio switches on and you hear Good Golly Miss Molly or Tutti Frutti or Great Balls of Fire, one of the other songs that's on the soundtrack, it's kind of ominous as opposed to anything else.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's just a brilliant job picking the right songs for the right occasion. So
Yeah,
that's
I agree. Okay, it got considerably harder as I narrowed it down. So for the next one, I went a little bit. Well, I guess it's not off the beaten path because when I mention it, horror fans, soundtrack fans are gonna instantly know it. My next one was Howard Shore for Videodrome.
yes, yep.
That is a creepy fucking movie that I still don't completely understand. No matter how many times I've seen it, my brain still hurts. And just the creepy, weird score and soundtrack go so well with the weird, strange visuals in the film. I had never really heard anything like it. Um, so preparing for the show, I had look, I had read up on this a long, long time ago, but in preparing for today, I did a little more uh, research. So what Howard Shore did was he composed an entire orchestral score and then programmed it entirely into his synthesizer. And then he played the final score by ear. You know, I'm retarded.
Come on,
A
spit it
string
out, Todd.
section played the final score by ear from the electronic version. So throughout the whole movie, it becomes really hard to tell what was real and what was synthesized. And
Right.
I think that fits the movie perfectly because you don't know in the movie what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just really fucking cool. And when I read up on how he decided to get that effect, I was like, holy shit, like who would even thought of that, you know? But you know, Howard Shore, of course, is well known for his scores, but that one took like just the creativity behind it was just ridiculous. I mean, he did a lot of other weird stuff too. I mean, he did, you know, tracks for the remake of The Fly,
Yeah.
Naked Lunch, Silence of the Lambs, you name it, like any sort of weird thing or any other thing for that matter. Um, Howard Shore has been there. I mean, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you say Howard Shore, and any movie fan will know immediately who you're talking about.
Well, and I think with only a couple of exceptions, he has scored all of David Cronenberg's movies.
As far as I know, I think you are correct.
There is one that I know he didn't score, which was The Dead Zone. And I just think that there was some kind of a time commitment on Howard Shore's part that he couldn't do it, so they got somebody else for it, which is fine because I love the score for The Dead Zone too. I think it's fantastic. But you know, when I think of Howard Shore, I think of David Cronenberg because you know the two really are tied together, and they really do make a fantastic team. And they can both really read each other's minds, and they know exactly what would work for a scene. And Howard Shore just really, again, another genius at work there.
Yep, absolutely. All right, what do you got?
Okay, my next one is The Exorcist.
See, now I'm so glad I didn't pick it because I'm like, I'll bet you he says The Exorcist.
Well, you know, one of the things that I was thinking when I was making my list was trying to think of which, and I do this with Jerry for Weekday Matinee too, trying to pick movies that I don't think that uh, you're going to pick. But with The Exorcist, I wasn't really sure because it's, again, another iconic score, although really that's owed to Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells album more than anything else.
Which still, well, you know, Exorcist is one of my absolute favorite movies, horror or otherwise. And Tubular Bells still gets under my nerves when I hear it. It gets under my skin
Yeah.
when I hear it because of The Exorcist.
Yeah, I can't, you know, whenever I hear that, I can't help but think of The Exorcist. I mean, you know, just like I can't help thinking of Psycho when I hear that screeching violin sound. Uh, and you know, I've tried to listen to Tubular Bells, and I've actually got the CD of it somewhere, or at least I know I had it at one point. And it's still, even just listening to the CD, it's still very difficult to listen to without getting creeped out by it. And which is funny because it's probably one of the least creepy pieces of music you would ever hear if it hadn't been tied to The Exorcist.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You would, but then that's the only thing I can think of is, you know, her walking, Reagan's mom walking down the sidewalk to Tubular Bells and the other places it comes in. I'm just like, no, that's fucking creepy.
Yeah. So hats off to and he made a couple of I know he made, I guess you would call it a sequel to Tubular Bells, but not quite as the same as the original. But of course, like anything else, the sequels generally never are. But with music, it seems even more so. It's very hard to duplicate lightning in a bottle in music.
Absolutely.
Yes. Just look at all the one-hit wonders in the world who were never able to get anything else done.
Exactly.
Oh,
All right.
anyway, okay.
So I did manage to, again, these weren't really in any order, but I guess this one is at the top for me. I'm a huge fan of this. It's really a band and a particular composer and a particular director that they always collaborate with. For me, perhaps the greatest horror film soundtrack of all time, because it fits the genre, the director, and the film so well, is Goblin and the soundtrack for Suspiria.
Yes, yes, yes.
My close friends and I are all huge Italian horror fans, huge Dario Argento fans, and huge Goblin fans. Been following them for years. Claudio Simonetti. Um, to me, no one does Italian horror better than Simonetti, and Suspiria is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Um, and the nice thing was Goblin wanted to be truly experimental, and Argento said, "Take your time, do what you want to do. This is the movie I'm making, and I trust you guys." And the whole thing, like, it's just, it gives you, it lets you know very clearly, like, just the themes of witchcraft and occult
Hmm.
and prog rock, things, and it was way ahead of its time as far as I'm concerned. But they didn't try to do too much. Like, they didn't try to reinvent prog rock, um, you know. But I like the fact that he used a big moog to do it, a bunch of Middle Eastern instruments. To me, again, perhaps the greatest horror soundtrack of all time. Bring on the hate, everybody! Bring it on. Although I can't wait to see if there's going to be like if there true horror fans out there are going to argue with me about this one, but I'm sure somebody will.
Oh, I'm sure you'll get an argument somewhere along the line
Yeah.
from that. I can't really argue with anything that you said about it. I'm not sure I would put it as the greatest horror soundtrack ever, but it's certainly up there, and it's
Fair
certainly
enough.
been on enough, top 10 lists
You're entitled to your
justify that.
completely incorrect opinion. Just,
So, but well, since you chose Psycho earlier, I'm going to go to one of my runners-up.
okay.
And this is going to surprise people because it's from a movie that I don't like, and that's The Shining. But I love the score for it. And in fact, the opening title score, as you see the car winding down through the mountains in Colorado. I thought at first that was actually a Bernard Herrmann score because it sounded so much like something he
Yeah,
would
it
do.
does. It does.
But I'm wrong. I was wrong about that. It was two women, Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind, who did the score for it. And I think if I have to give props to The Shining about anything, it really is the score. The music certainly does enhance the paranoia and claustrophobia of of the Overlook Hotel and Jack Torrance's descent into madness, and the fear that Wendy and her child have. I really like the score. I just wish I liked the movie more than I do.
Fair, that's fair. Something that, I wish that I had thought of that, of thinking of a movie that I don't like, but has a great soundtrack. And shit, I'm having a hard time coming up with one off the top of my head.
This actually came easy for me because even though I'm not crazy about the movie, I mean, I've got it on Blu-ray just kind of to complete my Stephen King movie collection. But I've always liked the soundtrack for it. But as a general rule, if I'm watching a movie and I don't like it, I tend to not finish them. So I don't ever really pay attention to music in bad movies.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I don't know about you or what anybody else does, but I know. And it's same with the book. If a book doesn't get my attention in the first couple of chapters, I'm not going to finish reading it. And if a movie doesn't hook me in the first 20 or 25 minutes, I'm probably not going to finish watching it. Or if I do finish, I'm going to be doing something else and just have it playing in the background.
Yeah.
So life is too short for shitty movies.
Yes, it is.
But speaking of movies, but this isn't a shitty one. Now, last week, you mentioned The Host, the Korean movie. And I think it was Dee who was happy that you'd mentioned that in the comments on the website. So I started watching it this afternoon, and I wanted to finish it before we started recording today, but I didn't get to. I watched the first half hour or 40 minutes of it, and I have to say, that is a good movie. I'm really enjoying that. There's two things about it. The monster really reminds me of the old movies like them, like some of the stuff we talked about the week before last with the movie monsters. It has that kind of a vibe to it, and it certainly even has the reasoning behind it. The old kind of nuclear thing, except this is like poisons and whatnot.
Right.
So it's got that, which I kind of like, and it's got a really kind of cool monster that I like, but it's got a really quirky sense of humor.
Right? It does. It does.
And I wasn't expecting that. Although I should, because I know Asian movies tend to have, their own little idiosyncrasies. But there's just some moments I just, what the fuck? But I'm really enjoying this one, and I'm hoping I'll be able to get to finish it tonight, because I want to see what happens next. Cool. Yeah. So that is a good choice.
Do we have another
Todd,
technical?
The Host. And if anybody hasn't seen it, check it out. All right. Well, I guess that wraps that up. Do we have any political rants this week?
No, I don't. I'm a little tired of it, but
yeah.
One thing that I did notice, not political at all, just something that I noticed, and a couple of friends and I were talking about it online, was there seems to be like this weird sort of online competition to see who is the biggest fan of something, and it's really weird. Like, the nerds rule the day today. Like, nerd culture is popular. New York Comic Con draws 180,000 fans. Even horror movies, like low budget horror movies, are doing well. And yet, nerds are fighting amongst themselves over like stupid shit, trying to be like the king of the nerds. And I don't understand it. It's like every review, quote unquote review I read is negative. There are some people that I wonder if they like anything, and I just don't get it. Like, if I post, say, I liked Stranger Things or I liked Daredevil, and then it doesn't even matter. There's always a handful of people that will shit on it no matter what.
Yeah.
Let's face it, like maybe you watch Stranger Things and you didn't particularly care for it. That's fine. Like if it's not your thing or you didn't like it, that's fine. But then people, you got a show that had some top-notch talent in it, that was very popular, that made it to Netflix. There must be some merit there. You know what I mean? And yet some people will write, that was the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. Really? So you're saying Biodome was better than Stranger Things? Like Ernest Goes to Camp ranks higher on your list? That's what I just don't get. Just the relentless race to be the first person to shit on something, or
Yeah.
shit on it the worst or whatever,
Well,
I don't.
to be fair, getting onto Netflix isn't necessarily an achievement. I mean, because look, they financed a Kevin James movie, for God's sake.
Okay, so there's that.
And they financed an Adam Sandler movie, two of them, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I think you get my
But
point, though.
I get your point. I get your point. And I was one of those who I like Stranger Things a lot, and we talked about this on one of our earlier shows. But I was not as enamored of it as everybody else was, because I just found the nostalgia too forced. And that was my opinion. And everybody else, who loved it, that's fine. I think if you find something that you really love and gives you some enjoyment, go for it. And love it and enjoy it as hard and as fast and as much as you want, because there's little enough joy in the world today, and you certainly don't need some scumbag sucking the life out of what you enjoy.
Exactly. It's almost like people hate to see someone else enjoying anything,
Well, if
Um,
I'm miserable, everybody else is going to be miserable too.
yeah, and I think, like, look, you and me and our fellow collaborators on the website and a lot of our friends, I think we have an eye for film, for music, literature, whatever it might be, and we can spot the good and the bad. But to your point, if someone enjoys something, who the hell cares? Like, just, and I'll bet you the people that bitch the most, like, oh, popular music sucks. Now let me go secretly listen to my Nicki Minaj mixtape.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. You know,
Hmm.
um, but it's just people. I think some of them think that they're being edgy and cool by just hating everything.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't make you cool. To me, like, I'd much rather see people like tell us what they love instead of bashing what they hate. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes you a Charles Emerson Winchester.
Exactly. Exactly.
And for those who don't know
Yeah.
who that is, go watch an old rerun of MASH, and the ones with
Mash? What's that?
Winchester. Yeah, MASH. What is that? Yeah. Uh,
Mash?
Jesus
Potatoes?
Christ.
What?
Yeah, I
Okay.
replaced one old piece of nostalgia with another old piece of nostalgia that nobody under 30 is going to remember. Oh
Yeah.
well. Uh,
Okay.
well, he was a pompous windbag.
That's true.
And I think that is probably a good term for people who just really feel the need to shit on things like that, like popular music or a specific TV show or a specific singer or whatever the case may be. So fuck
Yeah,
them.
exactly. And it's like you said, life is too short, and just find something that you enjoy and just go for it.
And I'm going to go enjoy some porn.
Nice. Why not? Like, yeah, I'm like, let's spool up some clown porn. What the hell?
Otherwise known as the presidential debate.
Yeah, not even gonna bother.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm not either. Sanford and Son is going to be on, so I think I'll watch that instead.
Excellent.
So that's it for this week. And if you enjoyed this week's show, check out some of the other podcasts that we have at thesupernauts.com, including my other podcast, Weekday Matinee with Jerry Janda. And our Halloween show will be coming out the Friday before Halloween. I think that's the 28th. So watch out for that. And until next time, may all of your journeys be filled with pure imagination.